All righty. Change the view here. Gallery view, speaker view. All right, everyone, let me go ahead and share my screen here and we will jump right on in. I am just very pleased with the turnout here. Hope this is beneficial to everyone. Let's see. Whoops, let's see. That's not what I want. Let me stop. All right. All righty. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Could someone unmute yourself and tell me yes or no? I can't see my chat.
No.
No.
You cannot? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone. Let me try this again. All righty. All right. Let's see. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. And so this is the cover letter one-on-one session. I want to welcome everyone. We have a really big crowd tonight, and I'm very happy to see that, but I want to make sure I'm mindful of your time. Thank you all for shouting out to your sport or your major. Please put that in the chat. We want to kind of see who's here. But my name is Terrence Hood, and I serve as Associate Director for Student Athletes and Alumni in the TCU Career Center. I also work with Student Athlete Development with Ms. Jessica Hazard and Danny Bradford. And so my role is really for career development for our alumni and our student athletes. So I want to welcome you to Steps to Create a Cover Letter that recruiters will love. So I want to get right into a couple of things here. This is going to be more of a conversation, everyone, not a presentation. So I really want to welcome you to unmute yourself, use the chat feature to share your questions. But I want to talk about what we're going to talk about this evening. Cover letters one-on-one. So what's a cover letter? How do you use it? I'm going to talk about some tips for maximizing your cover letter, what you should always do, what you should avoid, quick do's and don'ts. We're going to talk about a structure. I'm going to show you what's called anatomy of a cover letter. And we're going to actually take a look at a sample cover letter as a group and provide some feedback. So based on what we talk about in the session, I'm going to give you a chance to actually put that into practice with a sample cover letter. And then at the end of the webinar, we're going to actually have a chance. I had an interview today with Jimmy Gonzalez, who is an alum who actually hires athletes for various positions. So I'm going to show you a quick video that we recorded today around 4 o'clock of getting an employer perspective on what they look for on a cover letter as well. And then we'll wrap up and talk about action items and next steps. So really, really simple, really practical takeaways, hopefully for everyone today. For my student athletes, I will share the verification code for your Horned Frogs for Life credit at the end. So please stick around towards the end. So my first question, everyone, to make this conversational, I want you all to please put in the chat what are you, everyone logged in for a reason, whether it's for your Horned Frogs for Life credit, but I want to find out for you in terms of cover letters, what do you want to gain from our time today? What do you want to take away? What do you want to learn more about? And also tell us, have you ever created a cover letter before? If you either unmute yourself or put that in the chat, what do you want to learn more about today? And have you ever created a cover letter before? Had any experience like for internships or on campus jobs? Have you ever written one in the past?
Well,
go ahead. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, this is a community scholarship thing that Ms. Tamika sent out that we could go to, and although it is a requirement, or it can fulfill one of our requirements, I actually don't know too much about cover letters, so I suppose this is gonna help, you know.
Awesome, Leroy. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you, by the way. I'm Terrence.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes, sir. Wow. Shout out to men's golf. Let's see more information. Best ways. Okay. Business program. Several internships. Or some never have written one. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So we have, again, lots of spectrums here. Some are really new to cover letters. Some have written some in the past. And so thank you all for sharing that. But I want to really make this your session. This is not my session. This is your session. So please continue to share questions. Jump in anytime. Lockheed Martin. Yeah, cool. Yeah, lots of experiences here. Good tips when I need to make good impression in the future. Yeah, Tara, that's what it's all about. It's about your impression. So many of us, we talk about resumes a lot, and cover letters take a back burner to that. But now we're going to flip the script a bit and put cover letters right at the forefront in terms of how they might be structured and then how you might maximize your content. So thank you all for sharing what you want to take away from that. Let's jump right on in here. All right. So I'm going to get right into some do's and don'ts, everyone. Well, first of all, what the cover letter is, I think the cover letter can be an extension of your resume. So by show of hands or by chat, yes or no, how many of you all have a resume? Show of hands or chat, yes or no, okay. So don't have a resume. Now, if you do have a resume, hey, kudos. If you do not have a resume, I think it will be incumbent to create both a resume and a cover letter. This session is going to be really cover letter specific, but please make an appointment with your career consultant, which if the athlete will be me. If you're not an athlete, you'll meet with one of our other career consultants. We do have sample resumes on our website, so I recommend get a draft resume together and a cover letter because you want your career collateral to be ready no matter what the occasion. If it's an on-campus job you're looking for, and if it's an internship you're looking for, you want to make sure that you're ready before you need it, not when you need it. So the cover letter is a document that showcases your skills as it relates to a specific internship, on-campus job, or full-time job. So the letter is really, the resume is very, very much impersonable by nature. Resume is pretty much all bullet points. The resume is a snapshot of your past, but the cover letter gives you more capacity to make your letter personal to that recruiter. So for the hiring manager, it's basically a letter that gives you an opportunity to explain and expand. Explain what? Why am I applying? What am I applying for? Some people used to put like an objective statement at the top of the resume, you know, seeking an internship at Nike to achieve greatness. It sounds very, very vague. So we no longer need an objective statement. Now you can put that type of objective in your cover letter to tell employers what you're applying for, how you heard about the job, why you're interested. So here's some really, really quick takeaways for what you can do in a cover letter. First of all, show how you connect on a personal level. So if you are applying to T-Mobile for an internship, for example, in your letter, could you share a personal connection? Or if you're applying to be a mentor at the YMCA and you experience being a mentee, the resume doesn't have room for all the intangibles, but your cover letter gives you the capacity to come across as professional and personable. So if I have a personal experience using T-Mobile or a personal experience at the YMCA, I'm applying for a counselor internship. So what type of personal connection? I want you all to highlight the word connect, because I see hundreds of cover letters in my career, and honestly, 95% of them suck. They really are bad, but most time it's not really based on what they've done, it's based on lack of knowledge. So for employers to stand out, first of all, try to make a connection instantly, whether it's a personal connection, connect your skills, connect your education, because your content is powerful, but connection is key. Make sure that you're saving it as a PDF document in most cases. When you have a Word document, save it as a PDF first, because sometimes the format can be wonky when you transfer it over to a PDF. So make sure that your PDF is set, because visual appeal comes before content. And then show that you have researched that employer. So you really can't write an effective cover letter if you have not researched the company. So many people have kind of a generic template of a cover letter. I think that's well and good, but don't send that same template to Nike, to Lockheed, to PMG. You want to make sure that you research what that company is looking for. What mission statement do they have? You know, what are their values? What makes them tick? What skills are they asking for? So when you write your letter, you cannot write effectively without proper research. So if you're taking notes, write that down. Research before you write. That way it's customized. So nothing wrong with having a generic cover letter to start, but by all means, please don't send the very same cookie cutter, one size fits all cover letter to employers, because they can totally see that you did not put that work in. And it is some work, but it is totally worth it. Also, I see there's some student athletes on the call. We may have a few alumni on the call. Experience doesn't always have to be paid experience to be relevant experience. So in your cover letter, I heard someone that's a community scholar. Leroy mentioned that. So you might even highlight your community scholar experience on your resume, your athletics, If you've done camps, if you're a fraud camp facilitator, if you're an RA, or you're in the crew, all of those things give you transferable skills. So think about your cover letter as highlighting one or two things that highlight your skills, whether it's paid experience or not paid. And I'm sorry, I'm looking away, guys. I'm still letting people into the room here, so pardon me for looking away. Next thing is I want you all to think about your achievements and try your best to quantify. Well, what do I mean by quantify? Think about this in 3 words. How much, how many, how often? I'll repeat that. How much, how many, how often? So if you work on a team, how many people are on your team? If you happen to oversee a budget for your sorority, how much money was that worth? Dollar amounts. How often? Daily, monthly, weekly. So you want your cover letter to not be a list of your responsibilities, but you want to highlight specific achievements from your athletics. So what did you achieve as an athlete? That you achieved Dean's List, that you volunteer, and you will recognize for that. So don't just give a list of what you did. You want to share how well you did it. And the next thing here is your example. So make sure that you're typically sharing specific stories from your resume. So make sure that you're not repeating the resume, but if you're an athlete or if you're a community scholar, for example, what specific story can you tell that employer about that experience that demonstrates those skills? So you're really telling a story in your cover letter, providing 1 or 2 specific examples or stories that demonstrate the skills that the company's asking for. And then the last thing here, I'm going to give you a bonus. It's not going to cost you anything. This is not in very many guides or tip sheets, but this is something I learned from a workshop years ago. There's something called the ADA factor, catching attention, capture interest, create desire, call to action. So when we look at the sample cover letter later, you think about a TV commercial. So whether it's a baby or a puppy or something that kind of resonates, most employers and most commercials are designed to catch your attention. So the first 5 minutes of that commercial, or the first 5 seconds, is designed to say something that'll really get your interest. So do you need more sleep in your life? Or are you missing out on exercise? Do you need to lose weight? I mean, they ask you questions to catch your attention. So in your cover letter, your first goal is to catch the reader's attention, and we'll show you how to do that with some specific examples. Next thing, how do you capture their interest? With specific examples. Relevant skills are using keywords from that job description to actually capture the interest of that employer or that reader. Next, how do you create desire? Well, desire for what? The desire for bringing you in for the interview. So all of this is really designed, the purpose of this is to actually invite you in for an interview, but without catching my attention, capture my interest, I might not even want to offer you the interview. I probably will go to the next person because you only have about a 10 to 15 second opportunity to make that first impression with your cover letter. And the last thing is your call to action. So after all of this reading, all of your skills, all of your achievements, where do they go from here? We're going to show you some quick tips and some examples to maximize that call to action. All right. So what questions do you all have about this section? Does everything make sense? Okay.
I have a quick question. So when you mentioned about catching attentions, can you give us like more examples so that we could like capture it? Like what is mean to like putting a word to catch attentions or interests or desires?
Absolutely, man. So I'm going to show you a sample cover letter in about 2 more slides. But for example, if you want to highlight, let's say, a course project and an internship, that's 2 experiences. So I'm going to give you a structure to talk about a story from that internship. So maybe you achieved a certain project or you were given an honor. So instead of saying, I always plan events, you're going to highlight maybe 1 or 2 specific events that you might have planned. Does that make sense? Yeah, so great question. We'll give you some idea to look at some samples opportunities here, but think about specific stories from your experience that will demonstrate your core skills. So again, not what you always do, but what you actually achieved.
Can I give you an example?
Yes, indeed, Lance. Thank you.
Okay, so in high school, I used to work in an attendance office, and I would uh, do fouling. Like I would do personal fouls of students, and then the lady at the desk, she was like, "Oh, you can put this on your resume because instead of regular fouling, what you're doing is like you're fouling, but those are personal fouls. So like, would that count?"
No, Lance, it could count. I would say based on the skills that that job is asking for. So organization skills, work ethic, you can totally put that in a paragraph and really tell me a little bit more about, I would be, no, Lance, if I saw that, I'll be curious to know kind of what that resulted in. So maybe you can say this resulted in better efficiency for a staff of 10. So I would say, think about how you may want to position that to more what the results were. Because if you did these filing, what was the impact? So it doesn't sound too much like what you did. It focuses on, again, how well you did it. Is that helpful, Lance? Did that answer your question? Awesome. Thanks for asking. Anyone else want to share any other thoughts or any other clarifications or concerns or questions about the always? All right, everyone, let's move on down to the next thing here. So I got to go to both extremes, what you should always do. And I really hate to say always, I'm not prescriptive by nature, but there are some things that you should always keep in mind. Sometimes it could vary, but let's talk about what you should avoid doing. One thing that's important as you customize is to use a greeting like Dear Mr. Johnson. So if you do Dear Sir or Ma'am, or to my concern, who is that? So if I get that letter and my name is not on it, will I read it? If I'm your hiring manager, Peyton, and you put Dear Sir or Ma'am, I might brush it to the side. So how about, I wonder if it will be helpful to research who your person would be in advance. So if you're applying to Nike, for example, or someone said, maybe community scholars, Dear Dr. Tamika Gordon, how do I find that out? Maybe go to the website, call the company in advance. One of my alums said, I actually called this company and asked them who I should address my cover letter to. They gave me their name, they gave me their title, they were so nice. So it is totally possible to do a phone call to an organization if you don't know who they are, or even if you're on Frog Jobs or Handshake and you don't see someone's name, you can contact me in the Career Center and I might be able to do some research to see who you should address your cover letter to. But by all means, try your best to address it to a specific person, not just a generic sir or ma'am. There's some who don't even do a greeting at all. So I would say do the homework, call ahead, email someone to find out who you should make it addressable to, because you want to make sure it's a personal letter and it's customizable. And now this is very important in about 80% of the cases. I see the repetition factor. So some people put the same bullets from their resume on their cover letter. So I might say, plan events for my sorority on the resume. Plan events for my sorority in your cover letter. There's no distinction, it's the very same thing. What's tricky about it is it's already on the resume, so why be redundant? So if you want to talk about planning events for your sorority, maybe tell me about a specific event that you planned that was successful. So try to avoid the repetition factor, but tell me, I call it interpret the resume. So if you got Dean's List 5 semesters in a row and there's a good story behind that, or a certain project from the resume, you may have a relevant courses section on your resume, but I had 2 projects in my GIS class that I really want to highlight. That could be perfect content for your cover letter. So don't repeat the resume, interpret the resume. Now, in terms of length, now again, I'm not prescriptive about a lot of things, but you want to try to keep it to 1 page always. How many paragraphs? 3 is a good number. My sample I'll show you has like 3 paragraphs and a few closing sentences. So make sure that you keep it to 1 page always, because you have about a 10-second, 15-second window to make that impression. And I have seen a few people address it to the wrong person. So they have like 5 cover letters with P. Johnson, but the new person is Susan Johnson, but they forget to change the name. So the subtle things make a big difference. So it sounds kind of humorous, but I've seen people have no name or have the wrong name if they address it to a specific person. Now, the next thing is really, really interesting. Using too many I think, I feel statements. So if you're thinking about selling yourself, try I'm confident. So instead of saying, I believe my skills will be helpful to your company, I wonder if it's helpful to say, I'm confident my skills will be helpful to your company. or I know my skills will be helpful to your company. So rethink how you term, how you brand yourself. Nothing wrong with saying I think and I feel, but it's not as assertive and sometimes could be not as convincing. And again, customize it, not a one size fits all approach. It's tempting to send the same cover letter. You might not change a whole lot, honestly, but make sure that you're doing the work, looking at the key skills, giving good examples to demonstrate those skills, because you want to make sure you show how it relates. And the last thing is, again, sounds very, very basic, but make sure that you're avoiding grammar errors. What I do is I read all my cover letters out loud, because if you don't read it out loud, you might not catch common errors. So spelling errors do leave a negative impression. So when you think about first impressions, I had a letter recently, the address had the person lived in Austin, Texas. Now, obviously, Texas is not a state. And spell check, for whatever reason, did not catch that. So again, impressions, attention to detail, have a career center consultant review your cover letter, but make sure that you're avoiding some of the basic things like grammar and spelling. What questions do you have about the avoids? Does everything make sense?
Yeah, I have a brief question.
Yes.
So let's say we don't know, we do the research and everything, but we just don't know who to assign the letter to. What would you recommend us do in that case?
Yeah, there could be a couple of things. If you see the job on Frog Jobs or Handshake, I would say maybe reach out to your career consultant. So if you're a student athlete, that would be myself. But also, if you feel this work, it's appropriate to call the employer and ask for a human resources department, and they might say, "What's this pertaining to?" Because they normally do. Let them know I'm applying to your internship that I saw on Indeed recently, and I want to make sure I'm addressing it to the right person. Could you please give me the name of the hiring manager?
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah, great question. And don't be shy. I mean, I've had people try that and they've just been shocked. Hey, they were so nice. They gave me their name. So again, don't guess at it. Don't assume. Try your best to do that homework and address it to a specific person. Yeah, thanks for asking. What other questions about the things to avoid, or what other questions y'all have so far?
I have a quick question. Do you
Sure.
think it's ever possible to be like too assertive whenever you come off like on cover letters and stuff, saying like I know or like I'm confident in?
It's actually a good question. I think the theme of the letter is important. I do recommend that you use your voice. So if you feel comfortable saying, based on these experiences as a community scholar, I'm confident that my skills will benefit your company. So I think that's totally appropriate. Now that I know might be a little bit assertive, but again, use your voice. Most people say, I believe, that's totally fine. But I think employers are really more looking for people that are more convincing with their skills. So try it. Maybe try, I am confident. So maybe you don't want to try the I know right now, but again, use your voice. But I think it really goes into selling your brand, selling yourself, being confident and being convincing at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
I have a question.
Sure.
Given that you said try to avoid like the one size fits all letter to companies, would you just encourage us basically to just write different letters like each time? Or could we like, and not like take everything from one letter, but take like bits and pieces from each letter that we've written to, basically create a new one each time?
Yeah, great question, Carl. Thanks for asking. I would totally recommend that. So my answer is absolutely yes. So in theory, you might not have to write a new letter every single time, but maybe have kind of a master cover letter and then bits and pieces. Change your skills, change your examples, maybe change your greeting, but totally have kind of a master resume, custom resume, master cover letter, customized cover letters.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're very welcome. What other questions y'all have?
Well, I have one. So do you think that, how you say, don't say I think or I feel or any of that good stuff? But do you think that some employers would be like, they would be looking for submissive or dominant? I'm not like, because, some people like people to be lower than them, and some people actually like the people who step up on the plate. So what do you think? Which one to
Wow.
use?
Yeah, that's really a great question. Thank you so much for asking. And I would just say it just really depends on how you want to portray your brand. So I would say I see most letters I see have, I believe my skills would be a good fit, and that's totally appropriate. There are a few that say I'm very confident in my skills. So I would really say, um, depending on what the employer is asking for, maybe the job is in sales and the job requires, someone that's confident speaking in front of people and making presentations. So confidence in that context will be very beneficial. So I would just say use your voice, try different things. Nothing wrong with either approach, but I've seen a kind of a shift a bit in what people are putting instead of I believe or I think. I really rather you say probably I believe or I'm confident. The I know could be much for some, but the I feel, I wouldn't say that as much. But again, if you feel like that's kind of what you want to portray to the employer, I would say there's any way you choose to do it is right. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for asking. Any other questions so far? All right, everyone. Well, we are a little over halfway done here. I'm gonna go to a few more quick slides here, and I'm gonna give you all a chance to really get interactive and kind of share with me your thoughts here. This is actually one of my favorite parts here. So what you see here is what's called anatomy of a cover letter, and this actually gives you kind of a structure to what you see, the visual appeal and the content. So keep those in mind. Visual appeal does matter. It matters how your letter looks. So you want even spacing, decent font size. As a matter of fact, you might think about using the very same font size and style from your resume. So if your resume is a 12 font, Calibri, try that same look for your cover letter, because you don't want to have your resume as a 12 font and your cover letter as a 10. I mean, you want to make sure that they have consistency of look as well. So here's your structure, everyone. At the top, you want to put today's date. As a matter of fact, you see where it says use the same header from your resume. So whatever you have at the top of your resume, if your name is at the top and your email, phone, LinkedIn, copy and paste that same header to your cover, because you want the idea of consistency of look. So the first thing off the bat is dear Mr. and Miss. So again, no hiring, no dear sir or ma'am. Now let me do a precursor. If you cannot find someone's name, you might go with dear hiring manager, because sometimes you probably cannot find the person's name. That totally happens. But if you can't find out who the person is, just do something like dear hiring manager or dear selection committee. That will be my recommendation. So the first thing off of the bat is catching my attention while you're writing. What are you applying for? How did you hear about it? And why you're interested. So your first paragraph is really three things: what you're applying for, how you heard about it, why you're interested. That's three things. The whole question of why. No, why Nike? No, why Lockheed Martin? You can totally put company research in there. So focus on the letter on the job and the company. So if you're looking at the YMCA, I'm applying to be a mentor, counselor, that personal connection with YMCA or T-Mobile, if there's a personal connection, or if somebody referred you to apply, let's say Dr. Gordon recommended that I apply for your position, or I talked to someone in the career center, they recommended I apply to your position. You can totally name drop in your cover letter as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Now your middle paragraph is where you want to highlight your specific examples. So whether it's your athletics or community scholars or an internship or a project, camps, Greek life, your resume in theory is a variety of relevant experiences. So in that middle paragraph, I want you all to think about showcasing one or two specific stories. And I'm going to show you a sample letter here in just a moment here to give you some ideas of how yours might look. But think about specific stories right there in the middle paragraph. So what setting, what situation were you in? So as a student athlete on the swim and dive team, that's specific. What task or challenge? So maybe there's a certain project or competition that you want to highlight. Then your actions you took to resolve that challenge, and then what the outcomes were. So you think about that middle paragraph and we have something called the STAR technique. It's situation, task, actions, and results. And we use it typically for behavioral questions and interviewing. For example, tell me about a time you solved a problem. So you give me a situation you were in, a task, actions, and results. But in theory, you can also use some of that structure in the middle part of your cover letter. So you catch my attention at the top, you capture my interest, remember the AIDA factor, you create desire, and then there's a call to action. And the bottom part of the letter right there, what's your call to action? What's your next step? I look forward to hearing from you, to discuss an interview. That's very much appropriate. I've had a few to say something like, I'll be in touch with your office within 2 weeks to make sure my documents were received. Again, that's a little bit more on the proactive side of things, but again, use your voice. Any way you choose to do it is right. All right. So what questions do you have about this anatomy of a cover letter? I'm going to get to my sample here in a moment, but what questions do y'all have about this anatomy and structure? All right. Does everything make sense?
I think
I
so.
had a question I put in the chat.
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm in this by myself. I had a person to help me, but they couldn't make it. I'm so sorry. Let me check the
Sorry,
chat.
Steph.
Thank you for sharing. Do the specific stories you're identifying have to be mentioned on the resume, or can you talk about something that isn't in the resume? Oh, awesome. I would say yes, you can totally talk about something that's not on the resume, because your cover letter gives you more room to explain and expand. So you can totally go with something from the resume, like an honor you achieve. Tell me more about that in the cover letter, or totally do something that's not on the resume. So your sentence might be, in addition to my skills and experience, I was also involved in LEAPS or Chancellor's Leadership Program, or I was an athlete. So you can totally talk about something different that's not on the resume, as you said, as long as it's something that relates to the job. So feel free to do that. Either use what's on the resume or something totally different. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, and God, let me know if you put something in the chat here. I'm working at 2 screens here. I want to make sure I get to all your questions here. All right, so let's talk about a sample here, everyone. So I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger. So bear with me as my Zoom skills are not as sharp as they used to be. So here is actually a sample cover letter, everyone. It's not a real person. So I want you all to do me a favor, read over the first part of this letter. Go with the first paragraph here. So I want you to read that letter here. As far as I'm stopping here, maybe let's go down here. Let's just stop here. So take about 2 minutes here. Y'all read over this letter here and tell me in the chat or unmute yourself, what stands out to you about this letter? What is this person doing well? Or what do you think this person could improve upon? Or any other feedback about the letter that stands out to you? So based on what we've covered so far, here's a sample, but what stands out to you about this letter? Or what do you think they can change? I'm just gonna start here, kind of right there toward the middle. All righty. Okay, my mouse wants to cooperate. All right. Quality and strengths mentioned as an elaborator. Okay. Yafuchi, thank you. Yeah. So again, share in the chat if you want. Make sure everyone can see your response based on this sample here. What do you think? What stands out to you? Or what could they make? What could they do differently? And I'm going to actually scoot up a little bit more, everyone, because of time. Let me give you the whole letter. Actually, that might be even better. Here's the whole letter. There's a sample here. Yeah, even do you think the letter is too long, or do you think it's long enough? Any overall feedback, everyone, based on what we covered, please feel free to share.
I believe the person is doing like a good job on like selling their self, because like they're giving good examples of the things that they've done. And it's not like, it's like how you said, like they're just not pointing out, you know, what they're doing. They're actually elaborating on the things that they've done. I think that's really good.
And wouldn't you say it's too wordy? Like, wouldn't it be too wordy?
Well, good point. I mean, could be in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, for some, I mean, honestly, I think it's a well-written letter, but again, possibly maybe they could make it a little bit more concise, but that's a good observation. It's just a sample, but yeah, based on how they want to portray their brand, they took it to about 3 paragraphs and kind of a closing. So it actually is a good length in terms of paragraph there, but again, in the eye of the beholder, in other words, you totally could make it more concise, but I just want to get y'all's thoughts about what you think you might change, what this person's doing well. Yeah, good point.
I had a question on formality because like I feel like this person did a good job of expressing themselves and their characteristics, but if you're writing something to a hiring office, like is this too informal?
Interesting. Yeah. So you think some of the parts are a little bit too informal?
Yeah, like when it was like the result, if I can, like, I don't know, maybe it's the way I'm reading it too. That has a sense of making it seem less formal, but I don't know the writing structure itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Again, in the eye of the beholder, the person might be trying to add kind of more of a personal touch. Because when they say the result, question mark, it's kind of unique in a sense when you think about it. So again, based on what the company might be asking for, this Westero Castle could be more of a creative flair type situation. So maybe they may be trying to portray their brand on a creative side, but good observation. Yeah. Any other thoughts here? What are they doing well? What would you recommend they change?
Well, I'll certainly say it's unique. He or the person really like emphasizes on what they've done, and they go into details, and they put in their credibility and how they've known the company since XYZ, since, and how that like relates to why they want to apply or like be in that position.
Yeah, good point. So it's the idea of that connection that we mentioned earlier. You remember I mentioned the personal connection? So this person clearly has a personal connection with this Westeros castle, and they do a pretty good job of kind of conveying that. So again, the letter gives you the chance to come across as professional, mostly, and possibly somewhat personal as well, as long as it relates to the job. Great feedback, everyone. I'll give a few more minutes here. What other comments or questions do you have about this sample? What are they doing well? What would you change, or other observations?
You keep on saying beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So like to you, what would you recommend the student change?
Honestly, I wrote this little template. Well, not a template, it's a sample. I think it's actually very well written, and it kind of covers what we covered earlier. It catches my attention by saying it's with great enthusiasm. So right off the bat, they're showing me their sincere enthusiasm for the position. They capture my interest with that. They're quantifying $1.5 million grant, 100-page grant proposal, the result. So they talk about the STAR method, the situation, right there in the middle, specific story, a specific challenge, their actions and results. So I honestly wouldn't change much about this sample letter here. I think it's really based on the job, but I wouldn't make too many changes here. One thing I don't see, no, I see that they said they found the job on Handshakes is what they're applying for, how they heard about it, why they're interested. So, and the transferable skills. So I think it kind of covers all the bases of what we covered so far in our lesson, but yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for your thoughts on that. I like to always kind of show just a sample here. So as you write your letters here, keep these foundational principles in mind, practical things to make your cover letter attractive to employers. So the last thing I want to do, everyone, I'm going to unshare my screen here. I'm going to show you all a quick video that I did. I did an interview this afternoon, actually, with an employer named Jimmy Gonzalez, who actually hires student athletes and alumni. So I want you to check out this quick video about what employers look for on their cover letter, and then we will wrap up and call it a night and take your questions. So let me share my screen here. Right. Can everybody see my screen with my mug on there? If you cannot hear it, please let me know in the chat here. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Hello, Horned Frogs. My name is Terrence Hood, and I am working in the TCU Career Center. I serve as Associate Director, and I am joined this evening by one of our alumni, Mr. Jimmy Gonzalez, who is with Athlete Career Placement. And today we're having a quick conversation about cover letters, how to create cover letters that recruiters will love. So I thought it would be very appropriate to invite someone that is an employer that looks at cover letters to provide some insight and wisdom to our student athletes and our current students and alumni. So Jimmy, welcome back to TCU virtually, sir. How are you?
Good. I appreciate the opportunity to be here on behalf of ACP Athlete Career Placement. Looking forward to the next few minutes here to share some things.
Very good, Jimmy. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to TCU, and tell us a little bit more about Athlete Career Placement, if you will, please.
Sure will. Don't want to take too much time, but I was very fortunate. I'm a former college football coach. I spent 27 years in college football. Was a graduate assistant for Jim Wacker back in the early 80s there at TCU. Got my master's degree there, and then was fortunate to move on. And I was at some great institutions, including Texas, University of Texas, University of Oklahoma. I was at Notre Dame, West Point, Duke, Northwestern. So, and there are a few other schools, but those were a few of the places I was. And currently living in San Antonio, have gotten partnered up with a friend of mine, a former Naval Academy grad. His name is Jason Snyder, and Jason has asked me to join him at Athlete Career Placement. It's a new company. Basically, we launched on July 24th, but we are a staffing agency, a recruiting agency, and we're trying to help athletes that have degrees to transition into the business sector. You know, whether it's sales or management, IT, human resources, those areas right there. And so what we're doing is we're gathering resumes. We have a process. We go through a pre-screening, and we kind of have an interview, visit with our placement person. Basically, he's our CEO that is dealing with the companies and firms that we work with. We do not charge the university. We do not charge a student athlete. We get our fees working through the companies and things of that nature. And we've reached out to Terrence a couple of weeks ago, and we've had some great response back from some former athletes, and have done a lot of pre-screening with them. So that's basically it. And the process is very simple. You just submit your resume to our website. You submit it to me, and I'll give you that information at the conclusion. But it's quite simple. And I'd encourage you to go look at our website because it has everything in there. It's athletecareerplacement.com. Athletecareerplacement.com. Pretty simple.
Awesome, Jimmy. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're excited to talk to you today. So this session is really focused more on cover letters. In the past, we've always had a resume workshop, and cover letters kind of took a back seat. Not saying it's not important, but this time we're switching gears and we're putting cover letters right at the forefront. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience, Jimmy? Like, first of all, do you read cover letters? And if so, what things stand out to you in terms of first impression with content? Any particular tips or strategies you can share with our student athletes and alumni that might be watching?
Well, I promise you, of all those places I've been, I've written my share of cover letters, and then I've had an opportunity in some of the positions I've been as we've looked for coaches and looked for people in different positions, had an opportunity to review a lot of cover letters. And I think they're very important because it does give you an introduction into the candidate. I don't think you need to be too lengthy. You know, you can be too lengthy, but you want to be short and to the point, and make sure you put your features down. Yes, your experience and some of your characteristics and your main characteristic traits I think are important. And if there's some kind of connectivity is the word I'm going to use. If there's somebody you know that's working there, or you have some kind of connectivity or relationship with somebody at that particular place, make sure that person's aware of that. It's all about relationships. Yes, you've got to be qualified. You've got to have certain things that they're looking for, but it is also about relationships, and that's where a lot of things start. So that's what I would do: short and concise, to the point. Yes, you want to put some things about yourself, but you don't want to get too lengthy. Hopefully, your resume will have that as well. But the main thing is you want to make that initial impression. You want to make that initial impression.
Absolutely, Jimmy. That all makes total sense. And we say that all the time in the Career Center, but I think it adds a little bit more weight and value when an actual recruiter kind of echoes what we say as well. So Jimmy, my last question for you, what do you think student athletes and current students, alumni, what should they avoid in a cover letter? What would be kind of pet peeves for you, or things that could potentially disqualify them? But it would be visual appeal, content. Would you mind sharing that, please?
Yeah, you want to be positive, be to the point, but you don't want to give anybody kind of a way out. I say, you want to get interviewed for the job. Maybe you're not sure what it is, but and things of that nature. But so you can always turn it down, but you want to have the opportunity to get that job. That's part of it. Having those opportunities, and then you're able to pick and choose. So I would just say, just stay to the point. Don't give them an out. Don't provide an out in any ways. Things of that nature. I think that's the main thing. And one little thing, I think it's a big thing. I'm an old school guy. Yes, I understand technology, emails, and all that, but one of the things I've encouraged, and it made a point with me a long time ago, and I've encouraged this to my daughters who are now working in the workforce. But when you interview with somebody, finish an interview, no matter what happens, I would encourage you to write a handwritten note. Nobody writes handwritten notes nowadays, and it's just taking the time, and it's going to make an impression, because that's what happened to me at a very early age in the coaching profession. I got this note from this guy. We're having this staff meeting, and we have a position open, and he had written me a note a long time ago. I'd met him through some mutual friends, and his name came up. And so I just remembered he wrote that note. Obviously it's going to be the head coach's decision, whether he had the technical knowledge and all those things. But I was able to speak up on his behalf, and it just made a very favorable impression. So you never know, and you don't never know where that person may wind up too. That they're going to maybe move somewhere, and they may remember something. You may come back and apply for another job. It's a small world when it's all said and done. It's been a small world in the athletic field. I spent all my life, and I'm still involved with it. Serving as the vice president of university relations, so I get a chance to use all my relationships and connections. And that was kind of my end with Terrence. They couldn't say no to an alumni. I'm an old alumni guy, so they kind of had to. They got to make sure they're taking care of them. So that opened the door. And that's the thing is you want to be able to open the door. And some of those relationships, as I said, that had, or somebody that you may know at that company, they can open the door for you. And you want to make sure they open it all the way. You don't want to just get your foot in. You want to get all the way in, where you have that opportunity. So and I apologize for all the analogies and all those things, but that's just kind of how I see it through my experiences.
Wow. Well, Jimmy, that's actually perfect. I think it's really speaks to the idea of lasting impressions. Things have changed. Technology has kind of taken over everything, but something that people think is small, like a handwritten thank you note, that adds a personal touch and allows you to stay top of mind with them. Because like you say, you never know where people are going to end up, and you don't know who's going to read that and remember that, because in the sea of applicants, whatever you can do to stand out is highly encouraged. Like you said, such as the handwritten thank you note, little things
make a difference, where you have an opportunity to maybe, not saying you're going to be better in anything, but you're going to kind of push yourself in the front there. You're going to separate yourself from somebody. And that's what it's competitive. Everybody knows that. And we all know that as athletes. We all know that as coaches. It's very competitive out there. And then when you get out into the real world, same thing exists. But that's why we have our company, and there's a tremendous demand for athletes, for former student athletes, because they're used to discipline, they're used to sacrifice, they're used to all those different things that make them to have great work, that provide them with great work ethic.
Absolutely. Well, Jimmy, that's all the questions I have. We sure appreciate you joining us on this cold, chilly Wednesday, and we appreciate your time and insight. I hope it's helpful for those who view this webinar, who watch the recording. But again, Jimmy, we appreciate your time for being here. Thank you so much.
And one last thing. Okay, so again, the website, athletecareerplacement.com, and if we got a couple social media deals. The one I'm dealing with, and we're going to is our Twitter account. And I always got to remember, that's Careers Athlete, at Careers Athlete. Okay, careers with an S, at Careers Athlete. And follow us on that as well, because there's some information that we put out there for you. Look forward to hearing from you. And thank you very much, Terrence, for the time.
My pleasure, Jimmy. Thank you so much. And go Frogs.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Let's see. So everyone, we're coming down towards the end of our time together. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Let me stop a moment here. Thank you all so much for your patience tonight. This is our last thing here. We've heard from employers, we've heard from each other about cover letters. So the last thing is take some action. We recommend action steps here. Please make an appointment with the Career Center for a cover letter review, resume review, finding internships, grad school. And if you're a student athlete or anyone, actually, we have a brand new YouTube channel, TCU SADEV. All of our career videos are on our YouTube channel. And for any student athletes who are watching us who need Horned Frogs for Life credit, please take note of the validation code there on your screen. All right. So everyone, that wraps up our time today. Any other questions for me?
Is there any way you could like send out that PowerPoint?
Absolutely. Let me put my email in the chat. If you'd like these slides, please email me directly. I'm happy to share those with you. Oops.
Okay, I also had one more question.
Sure.
When we were going over like right before the anatomy of a cover letter, you said you want to write based off of 2 factors, visual appeal, and what was the other one?
Oh, content.
Content. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Visual appeal comes before content. How the letter looks has to be attractive, your spacing, your fonts, before you get to the content. So from my experience, visual appeal affects the content. Content could be good, but if it's all over the place, the fonts are inconsistent, sizes are inconsistent, it can be not leave the best impression. So
makes sense. Thank you.
Sure, you're very welcome. Thank you. All right, everyone. Any other questions for me before we say goodnight?
Can you go back to the verification code really quick?
Oh, of course. My pleasure. Let me go back here. Yeah. Yeah. So all of our student athletes, please take note of the verification code there for helper and to get your Horned Frogs for Life credit. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you for hosting us.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very welcome. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good night.
You do the same.
Good
Thank you
night.
so much. Nice to meet everyone.